Oh, okay.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Go Talk with Marcus, powered by Poddex, fueled by Goat Fuel. Once again, joining me on the show is my guy Jalen Hunter of the Unpopular podcast. What's up, man? How you doing?
How you doing, man? It's a blessing to be here, man. I appreciate you inviting me. I don't know why you keep inviting me. I guess I'm doing something right, so I appreciate it.
It is always a pleasure to have. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Appreciate
And
it.
talk football and or basketball with you, depending on the topic. Before we get into the subject of today's show, which is going to be ranking the top 5 offenses and defenses heading into the new NFL season, let's talk about Aaron Donald and the altercation that occurred between the defending champion Los Angeles Rams and the team they beat in the Super Bowl, the Cincinnati Bengals, in their joint practice. We've seen a lot of brawls and a lot of fights and altercations over joint practices over the years and preseasons, right? For those of you guys who are unfamiliar with the concept, usually during the preseason, ahead of the preseason game, the away team will travel to the home team and they'll do joint practices together during training camp just for extra reps and scrimmage and things like that. And Aaron Donald was swinging 2 Bengals helmets at Bengals players. That image has since been photoshopped in front of like an army of horses. Like the last resort kind of thing.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to that? And then what do you think is going to, at the time of this recording, there hasn't been a suspension or any consequences for Aaron Donald. What do you think is going to be the consequences?
You ain't got to worry. When this drop ain't gonna be no consequences. So here's the thing. I get the importance of joint practices and I understand the importance. Trust me, especially when you're limiting or you're cutting a preseason game, you're getting people into shape. I get it.
True.
But what did the NFL expect to happen when the reigning champions are having a scrimmage with the reigning losers of the Super Bowl? Like, what sense does that make? And don't get me wrong, man. I'm not here advocating somebody using helmets as a weapon here, but there's fights in practice. There's fights all the time. People fight their own team in practice. We've seen we remember the infamous Brandon Marshall video. I'm not Brandon Marshall, Bennett. I forgot his first name. We've seen the when he was with the Bears, Martellus Bennett. It's just it happens. Now I do think it's a little excessive, ripping helmets off and hitting people with it. I think reports are he wasn't hitting the people that the helmets belonged to. So he was actually hitting people that had other helmets on. So, you got to do something.
Let's get a plus for that.
Let's get a plus for that. But no, I don't think once I found out the league has absolutely nothing to do with training camp discipline, it's going to be the actual team. Oh yeah, no. He might get a fine. He might have to do a public apology. He might have to write a letter to his fans saying how sorry he is. He's not missing any games. He's not missing a quarter. He may not even miss a minute. That's just not going to happen. Again, the fights happen. It's just when you have a man like Aaron Donald, who is arguably the greatest defensive player ever.
Yeah.
This isn't the first time. I mean, again, we talked about this off mic. There's a whole clip of him putting on a helmet when the game is over with no pads on to go confront somebody. The man trains with knives. The man has a designated rookie to literally damn near rip his throat up. Like, it just, this is, when you're that good, there's something just not right up there. Like, so it's just another fight to me. I mean, we've seen brawls throughout this entire off season.
Yeah.
Now, of course, not to the extent of double fisting helmets, but it's just another fight in my opinion.
I mean, we saw the Patriots get into a fight with the team that they were. I think it was the Giants. I think ahead of their preseason. It's just. You got a guy that's Aaron Donald's size. Swinging football helmets is not
a good look.
It's not the best look. No, it's not the best look. You're right. He probably won't get suspended. Nothing will really happen to him as far as that's concerned. I just thought that was something worth talking about before we get into what we're going to get into today.
What I think as a bigger situation here is why the NFL doesn't. You have to, just like they do with scheduling. You have to understand, like, this is going to happen. I
Yeah,
think that there's always and a lot of the overreaction, in my opinion, is people that have never played sports
true.
or never played a contact. Hell, I played college. I played basketball since I was kid. Played middle school, high school, college. College basketball, we get into physical altercations too. It doesn't mean we hate each other. I mean, it just is what it is. What the NFL needs to understand, and what people need to understand, is these are grown men.
Yeah,
Like with adrenaline high, they already it's already outside the elements.
yep.
Football practice is the only practice that the practice is hard.
Yeah,
Easy basketball practice is layup lines and maybe free throws.
yeah.
There is not an easy
There's no
football
easy
practice.
football practice.
So it's like
There's
you
no easy.
got nobody wants to be there. You're already ready for the season, and then you're about to go against a team that you just beat slash lost to in the Super Bowl, not
Yeah,
like week 10 in the Super Bowl. It just the scheduling needs to be a little better with that, and the matchups maybe, but I don't know. This is, to me, this is really the only reason why this is a story, because Aaron Donald just
Aaron
went
Donald.
crazy with the
Just went
helmet.
crazy with the helmet. Yeah,
So
but I mean, yeah, I mean, we saw a couple of years ago, like the Texans and Washington get into it.
D'Angelo Hall never been the same.
But
Never
he's
been the same.
never the same.
He's
It happens all the time. I mean, sometimes you have teams that are, it's just joint practice is joint practice. I mean, but like these are grown men playing football. You get the chirping too much, they're gonna, that's just how it works. I mean, it happens in soccer, happens in dugouts clear in baseball at least once a week.
yeah. Yeah.
Like it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Just saw a clip in the MLS of two teams fighting.
What you
Like
got to beef? What you got to beef for in the MLS? Like, think
no,
about it.
MLS isn't good. It's a good soccer league
What
at all.
you beefing?
But yeah, I mean, sports is sport. It's just when you've got a guy the size of Aaron Donald that's got a personal choke person and he trains with knives, it becomes story. But NFL is not going to discipline because that's not an NFL decision. That's a team decision, and you know the Rams aren't going to suspend the best player on the team.
Exactly.
So
Best player, almost damn near best player in football.
absolutely one of the best. I think Aaron Donald is the best player in football.
Yeah, that's not happening.
That's not even a debate. And they're trying to win another Super Bowl, so he gonna be there.
Exactly.
So let's talk about it, right? Because we're talking about Super Bowls, right? And one of the most important components of a Super Bowl is having what a lot of people think is a balanced football team, right? Good offense, good defense, right? You hear the term complementary football thrown around a lot, right? So Jalen and I were gonna kind of compare our top 5 offenses and our top 5 defenses heading into this NFL season. We'll start with offenses, and you can just go ahead and list your top 5. If you want to explain what you're looking for in your offenses and things like that, you can do that as well. And then throw out your top 5 offenses.
So to do this, I have to look. I kind of contradict myself a tad bit in this list.
Okay.
I look at the most important components is the quarterback, the wide receiver core, the offensive line, and the running back.
Right.
And that's how I was able to compile. I don't care about the head coach in this. I just care about that's how I rank it. So what you want me to just start my ranking?
Yeah, you can start 5 to 1. You can go 1 to 5, however you want to do it.
I'm gonna start 5 to 1. Number 5, I have Tampa Bay. The reason why there's some question marks with Tampa Bay as far as how is Chris Godwin is gonna look when he comes back, which I hope he looks good because I actually drafted him in fantasy. It's okay. But how is he gonna look? There has been some moving pieces, and again, they say this a lot in combat sports, but they say it in football too. When somebody hints on retiring, or i.e. retires Tom Brady, that means that they're not really all the way in there. And it was only 40 days and a kid's meal, but he still did it. And it's just like, what Tom Brady are we getting? One of the biggest.
Speaking of Tom, not to cut you off, there's rumors apparently. So for those guys who don't know, Tom Brady missed Tampa Bay Buccaneers practice for a couple times. It was excuse for personal reasons. There's rumors on subreddits.
Oh no!
Twitter that people think that Tom Brady is going to be on the new season of The Masked Singer.
I know. I definitely. I think,
and that's why he's on, which I think that's pretty funny. And if that is true, that'd be hilarious.
To be honest, I honestly think it's when you retire, you retire for a reason, and we know that the biggest reason was he wanted to be, a family man, his wife, and this and the third. So I think that he was like, "All right, look, I'm coming back, but I ain't gonna be here the first month or two because I have family obligations. We have trips to
Sure,
go to.
sure.
That's what I think. But yeah, I have Tampa Bay number 5. The only hesitation I have is their offensive line. It seems
Yeah,
like it's deteriorating at this point. Your
yeah,
top two offensive linemen out for the season with ACL injuries. And again, I want to see what they look like. You lose Gronk, and people don't understand how important he is, especially when we talk about run blocking.
yeah,
Yeah, you have Chris Godwin, you still have Mike Evans, you have Leonard Fournette, who I think is going to have a big year, but I do need to see that for Tampa Bay. Number 4, I have Kansas City Chiefs. I know that's a little low, but you do have a lot of new pieces. You have
mhm,
Juju Smith Schuster, and you have pieces that are Valdez Scantling. You have people that you're asking to do more than usual.
yeah,
Like McCole
yeah,
Harmon's gonna have to be more important. Pringle might have to be a little more important. Um, Clyde Edwards, yeah, it's I want to see what happens. Yes, it's only one player, but that player is Tyreek Hill that is gone. You
yeah.
still have Patrick Mahomes. You still have one of the greatest tight end wide receivers of all time, and Travis Kelsey.
Yep.
I do, and I still trust that offensive line is better. It's good. It's
Mhm.
good, and it's not the Super Bowl offensive line.
No.
They attacked it. Orlando Brown. I think it's. I think they're still going to be good, and I think they're still going to vie for a Super Bowl. Number 3, I have the Chargers. Now, this is really if everything works out the way it's supposed to work out.
Yeah,
You have Austin Eckler, of course. To me, this is one of the best offensive lines in the league.
yeah,
Uh, Justin Herbert, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen. This is a squad, and a lot of people have this team going to at least the AFC Championship just with the moves they made, especially when we talk about defensively as well. But
mhm,
I just think there's a lot of people touting Justin Herbert as our top 5 quarterbacks right now. So if that's the case, you have to have a top 5 offense with those weapons.
sure.
So I have that at number 3. Number 2, I have Buffalo. They have 2 of everything. They have 2 of everything. The only what we're starting to really see is their offensive line isn't the best, and I do
Yeah,
want to know what Cooks looks like. He is being a rookie, but when you have Knox, when you have Gabriel, when you have, of course, the MVP candidate that is Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, there's a reasons why a lot of people have this team win the Super Bowl.
yeah,
Uh, and I and this is why I said I was a little contradicting. Number 1, I have Cincinnati. I have Cincinnati.
hmm,
Their offensive line is it was god awful. They
yeah,
did make some moves, so I need to see what they look like. But just look at their core. As you have Joe Burrow,
mhm,
you have Jamar Chase, who a lot of people I think a lot of maybe a top 5 receiver right now. You have T Higgins, you have Tyler Boyd, you have Joe Mixon. That all these players can argue are top something in their position.
sure.
And it's just that's why I said I'm a little contradiction because that offensive line is still iffy. But we even saw with a poor offensive line them making it to the Super Bowl. And now I don't know if that's going to happen this year, but I do think that offense is going to be explosive, and that offense is going to be the best in the NFL. So I have that's my list is Tampa Bay at 5. Let me see. Tampa Bay, Kansas City, the Chargers, Buffalo, and Cincinnati.
Okay. Um, when I first put the show together,
Mm-hmm.
I had Tampa Bay, and this was like weeks ago. I had Tampa Bay in my top 5. I am a lot more concerned than most
I
about
am.
the offensive line. Um, and I get it, it's Brady, and you don't want to bet against Brady, right? But I think what's important to note is these aren't just like this isn't like with the Packers where it's a left tackle, right?
Yeah.
Or it's not someone on the outside. This is guards and center, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is for a guy in Tom Brady who's never been mobile, the center of his offensive line has to be perfect because unlike most quarterbacks in the league today that will roll left or right, Tom Brady climbs the pocket.
Yes, he
There
does.
aren't many. He might actually be the only quarterback in football today that still climbs up in the pocket to buy himself time. So if the center of your offensive line is not healthy and it's not
Yeah.
functional, it's not at where Tom wants it, that could be a problem for the success of the passing game, of course, but then also potentially the success of Leonard Fournette and the running game, because a lot of
Yeah.
their stuff last season was inside zone. They don't really do a lot of outside zone.
And
So
he's gonna have to block now, and he's not
and
the
he's
best
going to have to
blocker.
block now, and he's
Yeah.
not that good of a pass blocker. So that's my one hesitation, but they're still a top 10 offense in football. Number 5 is a shocking one, though. I think the Colts are going to have a top 5 offense this season.
Man, I'm sorry.
I do. And here's why, right? I think that Jonathan Taylor is he's the third best running back in football. I had to think about it. He's the third best running back in football, in my opinion. I think they have the best offensive line in football. I think that their wide receivers will improve because they have a better quarterback in Matt Ryan. From a standpoint of decision making, and as far as like Matt Ryan's not going to turn the ball over. Matt Ryan hasn't thrown for less than 4,000 yards since his second season in the NFL. So we know that the passing yards are going to be there, and they're also trying to get Nyheim Hines back into the flow of things, because 2 years ago when Jonathan Taylor was drafted, obviously he missed his entire rookie season due to injury. Nyheim Hines had a fantastic season.
Mm-hmm.
Then the opposite happened. Last season, Nyheim Hines was hurt, and Jonathan Taylor had a great season. This season, they're trying to do a little bit of both, which could make that backfield, I think, one of the best in football, because Nyheim Hines is a threat out of the backfield from a passing standpoint. I do think I'm like super high on the Colts, which is why the number 5. They have no business being in the top 5, but I'm really high on the Colts, and that's why I have them in my top 5.
Can I ask you something? I didn't mean to.
No, you're good.
You're high on the Colts.
Yeah.
I don't know if they are on your list before I ask this question, but you're high on the Colts because you feel that Matt Ryan is going to elevate this wide receiver core, because you look, in the wide receiver core outside of Michael Pittman isn't the best.
Yes.
Do you feel the same way about Green Bay? Because Green Bay, in my opinion, has a better offensive line than
we do. We do have a better offensive line,
and you have
Green Bay's 4th.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fair. It's Green Bay is 4th. At first I wasn't going to include them in the list because I didn't want to seem biased. But Green Bay is 4th. I think that people are making too big of a deal about Davante Adams being gone. Right? I get it. He's the best receiver in football, but I think what we have to recognize is that Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers because he's Aaron Rodgers, right? Davante Adams is Davante Adams because of Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, we've seen Aaron Rodgers be successful without Davante Adams. We've seen Aaron Rodgers be successful without David Bakhtiari. Like, Aaron Rodgers is a very talented quarterback. Do I think there's going to be growing pains for this offense? Yes, I do. I do think there's going to be growing pains for this offense because you have a whole bunch of, young guys coming in. And aside from Randall Cobb, who's not going to make that much of an impact, no one really on this in our wide receiver room has a rapport with Aaron Rodgers to the point, like, in big time moments we have to pass the ball, like, he can trust you to go do it. Do I think that Allen Lazard will grow into that as the season develops? Of course I do. Right now he's not there yet, and that's because we haven't seen them in those situations yet, because obviously the season hasn't started. So the Packers are 4, because with David Bakhtiari being back, I think that makes the offensive line that much better, despite the fact that we won 13 games without him being there. That is helpful. And I do think that AJ Dillon and Aaron Jones are among the top 1-2 punches in the in the backfield in the NFL. And I expect AJ Dillon to get a bit more. I expect him to see the field a bit more this season than he did last season. Number 3 is the Chargers, for all the reasons that you mentioned. I think the one small hesitation I have with the Chargers is, unlike most other teams that I think are going to go far in the playoffs, they don't have a reliable number 2 in their backfield to give Austin Eckler a break. Like, Austin Eckler does everything. Like, he's their every down back, the red zone back, and he catches balls out of the backfield. And that's why he was in and out of the lineup a bit last season due to injury. And then my 2 and 1 are same as yours, but I have them flipped because Joe Mixon's a better running back than Devin Singletary and James Cook. And so I agree with you. I do think the Cincinnati Bengals can have the best offense in football this season, because last season they're the only team in NFL history to have a 4,000-yard passer, 2 1,000-yard receivers, and a 1,000-yard rusher, all under the age of 25. They're all 25 now. And with a
Y-
better offensive line, they're likely going to repeat those numbers.
That's true.
so,
You,
it should be. I think they'll be electric this season. They'll continue to be electric this
you
season.
know what's interesting to me, man? And I was thinking about this team extremely hard. And now that I didn't hear you say this team either, I do want to get your opinion on it. The Raiders. Now, they have the reason why I had to eliminate them off this, or why I didn't put them on my list, is two reasons. That offensive line, bro,
That's the
is
same with me.
god awful.
Yeah.
And injury history.
Yeah.
Because if we talk about Josh Jacobs, he, when healthy, can be one of the top running one of not the run
Yeah.
one of the top
Yeah.
running backs in the league. We know how good Darren Waller can be, and we've been talking about Derek Carr. A lot of people can argue, is Derek Carr better than Matt Ryan, since he's on your list at this point.
Sure.
I mean, again, you have Devontae Adams, you have Hunter Renfro. It's just, I guess, in my opinion, that kind of proves, and I do want to hear your take on it. That kind of proves just how poor that offensive line is. That we named, my number 5 was Tampa Bay. Your number 5 was the Colts.
Mhm.
To me, if you look at just the pieces and weapons, the Raiders should be better than both teams as for
Yeah.
out,
Yeah.
and they didn't even make the list, which to me is
Well,
crazy.
I think the tough thing for the Raiders is the O line. Number one. Number two also is I again, because of Josh Jacobs' injury history, it's really important that they were going to hold on to Kenyon Drake, and
Yeah, and
they did not do that.
they released
Um,
him.
yeah, they released him,
They didn't even trade him.
which I think is a bigger deal than most people recognize. Because when you have a guy in Josh Jacobs who is uber talented but has a lot of miles on him and has injury history, you got to get someone else in there that you can rely on that can take some of the low. It's the same. It's the same way I feel about um, Carolina, and they have that in Hubbard, right? I feel that same way about the Giants with Saquon Barkley. I feel the same way about Tennessee with Derrick Henry. Like these are all talented running backs, but they have a lot of miles on them, and they now have an injury history. You got to have at least one other guy in your backfield that you can split the snaps with, not 50-50, of course, because they are still premier backs, but split it just enough, maybe it's a 75-25 thing where they're not getting so much miles. So now their injury history or their chance of injury isn't that high. Like since Christian McCaffrey's been in the league, he's played about 80% of the Panthers' offensive snaps, and he's
Yeah.
accounted for just about that much of their offensive production. Like
Mhm.
he's a workhorse. Same thing for Saquon Barkley. We know what the deal is with Derrick Henry down there in Tennessee, right?
Yeah.
Those teams, well, not really New York, but the Tennessee and Carolina have a secondary guy that they can go to help take off some of the stretch of their premier back. The Raiders don't have that. That's why they're not in my top 5. The other thing too is, as much as I love Derek Carr, once you get past Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfro, and Darren Waller, they don't have any more receivers because they're all in jail. And
No, shoot.
it's just, it's just there's
Yeah.
no one else really for him to throw the ball to. And when you look at like the Colts, right? Yeah, you got Michael Pittman, and it's not the best wide receiver room, but there's at least 3 guys there, right? There's about 4 or 5 guys potentially in Green Bay, right? You have the 3 guys in Cincinnati. I think they have the best wide receiver trio in football. You have 3 guys in Buffalo. It's like there's other teams that have at least 3 guys at the wide receiver spot and a tight end. Or in the case of some teams, like trying to think of a team. I can't think of one right now. But like there's other teams that have 4 wide receivers and don't really have that good of a tight end, and they can still be better offensively from a production
The
standpoint.
Rams.
Yeah, the Rams. Like the Rams have 4 really good. They have 2 really good wide receivers, 2 wide receivers that are like okay, and then of course they have the guys in the running. It makes up for the fact that when you look at the depth chart, Tyler Higbee is their starting.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think the only pushback, and I agree with what you're saying. I'm just playing devil's advocate, and the only pushback I will say is I don't think we give enough credit to Derek Carr. Makes his wide receivers better,
He does.
and I think one of the biggest reasons why we're talking about Hunter Renfro is because he's playing alongside a Derek Carr.
Yeah.
The reason why, what's his name? Edwards last year.
Edwards, yeah.
Yeah, the reason why he was important is because Derek Carr made him important.
Yeah.
I
I'll say
agree
this:
with.
if they still had Zay Jones on the roster, I'd feel much more confident about their offense because Zay Jones played a big part in
Yeah,
the back half of their push, and then obviously he played a big part. Even though they lost, he did play a big role in the game against Cincinnati in the wild card round last year too. But
yeah.
he's not more, and that's
I
something you need.
I've gone on a limb and gone as far as to say every team in what the AFC West is going to make the playoffs, and I think that is a byproduct of hopefully everyone being healthy
Yeah,
and Derek Carr doing what he does. Because
Mhm.
even that offensive line ain't been good for a good little minute,
Has not, has not.
and I mean, even though it was a wild card, they still made it to the playoffs last
Yeah.
year. So yeah, I feel you though.
Before we jump into defenses, there's two teams I do want to talk about that obviously are not going to be top five, but maybe they could push for the top five, and maybe they sit somewhere in the top 10 potentially. Which offense do you think will be better this year, the Eagles offense or the Broncos offense?
Broncos.
Yeah.
Broncos, because of Russell Wilson. I
Yeah.
talked about this. Shouts out to Blaine. I talked about this with Blaine on my podcast, man. Um, Russell Wilson is so good that he was able to mask all the problems that Seattle has,
Mhm.
whether that is year after year deteriorating offensive line, year after year deteriorating defense. Your best player on the defense is a safety that's not good in pass coverage. Your top weapon is DK Metcalf, who is huge but has a drop problem. Um, your running backs continue to get hurt year after year to the point where Carson, unfortunately, had to retire due to
Yeah.
neck injuries.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson is so good that he was able to mask all that. I mean, there was the whole Let Russ Cook campaign where he had Tyler Lockett look like Cooper Cup for a good 4 or 5
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
Um, and I think now that you paired him, even though the offensive line for Denver isn't the best, you still is a better offensive line than Seattle.
Yeah.
You
Sure.
have Williams as the running back. You have Judy. You have Cortland Sutton. I just think that this team is going to be. I trust the pieces that I have with this team more than I do with the Eagles. Even though the Eagles were really good at running last year, the number one rushing team. I trust Russell Wilson more than I trust Jalen Hurts. I can't get out of my head that image, what Jalen Hurts looked like in that playoff game when the Bucks forced him to pass the ball.
Yeah.
When they said, "All right, we're going to stop the run. We're going to load the box. If you're going to beat us, we have a number. We have one-on-one coverage to all the wide receivers. You're not going to run on us."
Yeah.
They made Jalen Hurts throw the ball, and boy, did he look like what he looked like in Alabama, which is exactly why Tua took his spot. Um, I like Jalen Hurts, even as a Commanders fan, unfortunately, but I just trust Russell Wilson and the pieces yes, the best person outside of the quarterback is AJ Brown, who is on the Eagles, but I trust what I have in Denver with Russell Wilson, with Jared Judy, with who they have more than I trust Jalen Hurts having to throw the ball. Because yeah, the running game is going to be okay. The offensive line is better for the Eagles than it is for Denver, in my opinion. But when teams kind of like what we talk about with the Ravens year after year, with teams when they force you to throw the ball, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
And I've seen it against Tom Brady. And it
Yeah.
was not good. So I have Denver.
So let's ask. I do want to just real quick before we go. I want to ask this one more question before we get
Mhm.
into the defenses. Russ has been over the last 3 or 4 years combined the most sacked quarterback in the NFL.
Yes.
Right? Some of that has to do with the offensive line. Some of that also has to do with the fact that of all the quarterbacks in the NFL, Russell Wilson takes the longest to get the ball.
Yeah, he be holding the ball. He be holding that joint.
Does that play a factor into how productive this offense can be? Because you look at Nathaniel Hackett, right? And everyone's saying Nathaniel Hackett can have a really successful first year as a head coach because when you have a great quarterback, it's easier, and that's true. But Aaron Rodgers gets the ball out of his hands quickly, whether it's a throwaway, whether it's a check down. So like Aaron Rodgers doesn't get sacked that much. Does Russell Wilson holding onto the ball get us in a situation in Denver similar to what we saw over the past couple of years in Seattle, where he's getting sacked and he's taking a lot of hits. Because let's face it, right? It becomes harder as an offensive lineman to keep track of your quarterback and prevent him and keep him upright if he's moving around in the pocket. And that's no shot at Russ because that's what he does. That's what brought him to the game, and it makes perfect sense. But he does hold on to the ball a lot, and I do think that that could potentially get in the way of some of the fireworks we could see from Denver this season offensively, because those sack numbers could be the same, despite the offensive line being better.
The only I agree with the stat of or the stats that you brought to the table. Good defense. I will say one of the biggest reasons why he was holding on to the ball is because his receivers weren't able to create separation.
Okay,
As
sure.
great as good as we love DK Metcalf, he don't create separation to save his life. He's just be
Sure.
catching over people.
Sure.
His Tyler Lockett, yeah, he's good, but he's a small receiver. Yeah, he's good at running routes, but when, who else was he throwing to? Golden Tate. So just I'm just saying
Not the good Golden Tate either.
I do think that is an option and that is a possibility. But I do look at the factor of now you're playing with speedy receivers that are good at running or that are good. I mean, Cortland Sutton is great at running routes. I do think the injury to I forgot the other wide receiver that's season ending for Denver. That's going to be big. But you know, Judy, we know how good he is at running routes. We know how fast he is. So
Yeah.
I do think that if Russell Wilson is going to experience something that he hasn't really experienced a while in his career, maybe top tier. You know, when Tyler Lockett was at the pinnacle of his game, and DK Metcalf when he plays trash teams, he's gonna have wide receivers that can constantly create separation. And I don't think now if he still holds onto the ball at that point, then yeah, that's on him. But
Yeah.
I don't think that the offensive line is going to need to be as stable as an offensive line like Baltimore's, where Lamar
Sure.
Jackson looks and is like, all right, I ain't got nothing and dips. So yeah, I do think if he holds onto the ball a lot, or as long as he has been, then yeah, that's going to be a problem. But I
Yeah.
also factor in who the hell you throwing the ball to. I mean, hell, I can't create separation either. So it's going to take me a good little minute to figure out what to do. So that's just me.
Yeah. Let's talk about the other side of the ball. There are a lot of interesting teams that made a lot of moves, specifically defensively, whether it was in free agency, whether it was via trade, or whether it was in the draft. So, who do you think? What teams do you think are going to boast the top 5 defenses in the NFL this season?
Let's start with number 5. I have the Saints. To me, this team, I think this. I will go out on a limb. I haven't done my or haven't released my NFL or NFC South episode yet, but I will spoil it. I think that this is the best team in the NFC South, and largely because of their defense. When you have Jordan, when you have a lot of the pieces that Lattimore this is going to be this defense has always been a top tier defense.
Mhm.
It's just it's been overshadowed by how good the offense has been with Drew Brees and Michael Thomas and stuff. And now that I think that, you know, the defense is going to have to take more of a front seat for the Saints to be good, I think that people are starting to see, this is a great defense. So I have the Saints at number 5. I have Tampa Bay at number 4, because of their defensive front. You know, you still have Davis, you still have Bennett, you still have losing Sue is going to be big. And I want to see how they bounce back from that. But you have Via who is like a human wall.
He's crazy.
It's
He's
that,
insane.
and so just like has been for the past few years, it's going to be virtually impossible to run on this team. So I do that. It's still good, yeah. And their back end of their defense is getting better. While it's not top tier, it still is getting better with Whitehead, and it's number 3. I have Green Bay. You have the Smith, you have Preston Smith, Zaire Alexander. See what happens with Kevin King. This team, this is the first year because of what Devontae Adams and
Did you list Kevin King?
I said maybe.
Oh,
I said maybe.
Yikes.
He has his moments, but I'm really looking at the fact that you have, to me, arguably one of the best defensive players in the league, and Zaire Alexander getting fully healthy at this point.
Yeah.
I look at this team. This team is going to have to lean on their defense a lot more, especially early on, when Aaron Rodgers and the wide receivers are going to have to pick up, or build that chemistry. It's
Yeah.
going to have to be on the defense for the first few weeks, in my opinion, because what the hell I've seen in the preseason with these wide receivers dropping every
It's
pass,
not been good.
has not been good. So I think that they're going to need to be good, and I think they are good, especially with some of the pieces they made. I do want to see what happens, with Zendarius Smith, see what they look like with him gone. But what they're replacing, this to me is a top tier defense. So I have them at number 3. Number 2 and number 1, it's a toss to me. So for number 2, I have San Francisco. You have Nick Bosa, man. You have Fred Warner. This team, to me, this is a Super Bowl caliber team. If Aaron Rodgers was on this team I would have them as heavy Super Bowl favorites. If Patrick Mahomes was the quarterback for this, I would have them as heavy Super Bowl favorites. Just that's how good this entire team is, and the defense. I mean, this defense was able to let DeForest Buckner go and not miss a beat. Just think about how and the type of player he is.
Yeah.
So look, I have San Francisco as number 2. And number 1, I have Buffalo, which is one of the biggest reasons why I have them winning the Super Bowl this year. I have them as the second offense and the first defense. Poyer, White, now, and you get Von Miller. They don't need Von Miller to be Denver Von Miller.
Sure.
They need him to be more like LA Von Miller while you show up in big moments. Hell, that's one of the things that we talk about is if they would have just gotten one stop, it wouldn't have had to fall to a coin toss.
Yeah.
So not to mention you still have Oliver. It's this I have this. So I have Saints, Tampa Bay, Green Bay, San Francisco, and Buffalo for me.
Okay. So my number 5 is this defense list was much harder for me than the offense list.
Mine was
number 5. I have the Chargers.
He's coming in hot. He's coming in hot, guys. The Chargers are number 5.
I really think the Chargers are going to have a good defense this season.
Mm-hmm.
My one hesitation in putting them in the top 5 is like, okay, J.C. Jackson joined that secondary, wonderful. Khalil Mack joining the team, nice. Takes attention off of Joey Bosa. We could see both of these guys push. If they're all healthy and they're at the top of their game, they could.
That is why I didn't put them on.
They could get 10 each, maybe more, but they still don't have a run stopper.
No,
and that is my one hesitation, is that you could still run all over the Chargers if you wanted to, which was their problem last season. But I love their secondary. I think their secondary is great. Obviously, they just inked Derwin James to the biggest deal for a safety in the history of football. And like I said, they have J.C. Jackson, who has led the league in interceptions over the last, I think, 3 years. Like he's been incredible. So I'm hedging my bets a bit and hoping that the run defense isn't as bad this year as it was last season. That's why they're number 5. Number 4.
I'm sorry. Can I add something to that? One of the biggest reasons why because I had them just outside.
Yeah,
is because 1, J.C. Jackson's hurt right now. 2, I'm looking at the acquisitions that they got. Like I said, J.C. Jackson and Khalil Mack, and then I'm looking solely at Khalil Mack at this point. The last time we saw Khalil Mack, he wasn't that good. I'll be real with you. I mean, now I don't know if that was because of age and injury, piling up, or is it because you were just playing for the Chicago Bears and nobody outside of Raekwon Smith looks good in a Chicago Bears jersey at this point. But yeah, J.C. Jackson's hurting right now. Joey Bosa, he's been in and out the lineup multiple times. Khalil Mack has dealt with his own injury history. The only person that's actually, Derwin James has been.
He missed the season 2 years ago.
So it's like I want them if everything works out, they to me are top 5 as well. They're closer to 1 than 5 in my opinion if
Sure.
everything works out, but that's one of the biggest factors, and of course the run defense. They're one. I had to look at when I looked it up. I thought it was a lie. They're like one of the worst run
Yeah, they're one of
defense.
the worst run defenses in
I think
football.
they're like 25th. And I was
It's such a really it's you would need a perfect storm kind of thing. I am going and I'm operating under the assumption that the run defense will improve, even though they didn't really focus on it. But I do think it will improve. But yeah, I got them at 5. It's one of those where it's like if everything goes perfect, I think they can be a top 5 defense in football. Number 4, I have the Packers for all the reasons you mentioned. So I won't rehash those things. At number 3, I have the Saints. The Saints have been a top 10 defense, as you mentioned, each of the last couple seasons. 2 years ago in Drew Brees' last season, they were top 5 offensively and defensively. You take that defense, a defense that has swept the Buccaneers since Tom Brady's been there in the regular season anyway. They're 4-0 against them. And you add Tyrann Mathieu, who is one of the best safeties, if not the best safety in football. That defense only can only get better. And right, because Jameis Winston, as much as I love Jameis Winston, as much as I think he is one of the most hysterical players in the history of sports, he isn't that prolific as a quarterback. This defense is still going to have to be, like you said, at the forefront of the Saints' success. But this defense also causes a lot of matchup problems for a lot of offenses across the league, right? Because they don't really have a weakness. Like they've got a guy up front. That's Cam Jordan. They have a guy in the linebacker core. That's Demario Davis. And now they have their guy in the secondary in Tyrann Mathieu. Not to mention they also have C.J. Gardner-Johnson on the other side of the field with them. So like this is a complete defense on all 3 levels. And I think it's a championship caliber defense. And as long as Jameis Winston plays good football, which is what he was doing before he tore his ACL, I could see the Saints making a push to win the whole thing.
Okay, Madden. You saw the Madden. You must saw the Madden thing too. Okay.
So the Saints are number 3. Number 2 for me was tough because there's a lot of different places that you can go with number 2. But I had to just play the odds here. I have the Browns at number 2. And the reason I have the Browns defensively at number 2 is because they have Myles Garrett, who's really, really good. They have sometimes I mess up his name, sometimes I don't. They have Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who I think is one of the better young linebackers in football, whose name has just kind of gone under the radar because of Michael Parsons, and whatever, it's fair. And then, of course, they have Denzel Ward back there in the secondary along with Greg Newsome the second. Their safeties aren't the best, but they do have a decent secondary with Ward and Newsome. This is a team that's going to have to rely on their defense. Like if they're going to want to win games in these first 11 games it is that Deshaun Watson is out until week 13. If they're going to try to win some of those games and at least try to stay afloat and see if they can maybe make a push in the last couple weeks of the season when Deshaun Watson gets back in week 13, it's going to take the defense. I think Myles Garrett has the potential to be Defensive Player of the Year this season because of that, and also just because he's super, super talented. I think he's top 3 defensive player in football behind T.J. Watt and Aaron Donald, respectively. And the number 1 is the Buffalo Bills. They were the Buffalo Bills were the number 1 scoring defense in football for much of the season. A lot of it had to do with the schedule not being that friendly because they played a lot of weak offenses. But this is a hungry football team, and I think they're going to be a really good defense again this season, and they're going to be a true number 1 defense. It's not just going to be because they're playing weak opponents, because no, they're not. They have a tough schedule this season. They're playing good opponents, so it's not just going to be because they're beating up on bad teams, but they're going to, I think, have a really good defense, and they're going to fare well against bad teams. I think Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, they're old, but I do think that they are an underrated safety tandem in football. And like you said, they just added Von Miller. Like they had all the pieces. They just needed that one veteran leader that's kind of been there and can kind of steer the ship defensively and be the quarterback of the defense. And now they have that in Von Miller. And even though he is old and might not impact the game that much, you have to respect Von Miller and his presence. And so that could open the door for some of the other young guys, both on the D-line and, of course, in the linebacking core to make some plays potentially.
You broke it down quite elegantly, all your 5. So what is your viewpoint about San Francisco?
San Francisco. I'm just so with San Francisco right now. I gotta be honest. If I'm being complete, so San Francisco's in my top. They're in my top 10. And I can pull up my top 10 for you. I don't have my San Francisco is 7th on my list. They are behind here. Let me see. They're behind Tampa Bay. So I have Tampa Bay and then I have San Francisco. San Francisco has a lot of talent defensively. A lot of their key players though have an injury history. When they're all healthy, they're fantastic, right? Like Nick Bosa has kind of had a thing with injury. Fred Warner's been consistently healthy, which is nice. And by the way, shame on the NFL for not having Fred Warner as one of the top 3 running backers for the top 100. That's absurd.
When I saw that they put what's his name at 23, bro, Trayvon Diggs at 23.
Yeah.
Yes, he has 11 interceptions, but he also has given up the most passing yards in the NFL. So that's the ultimate feast or famine player right there.
Absolutely.
It's just
But yeah, it's just. I also think that this defense could be potentially in a lot of long field situations, because I get it, right? Trey Lance, from a talent perspective, has a higher ceiling than Jimmy G. Obviously, he's already coming in with a higher floor than Jimmy G as well because he is more physically gifted. But this is technically his rookie season. There are going to be ups, there are going to be downs, there are going to be growing pains. We all know it's very easy to confuse a young quarterback.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be at all shocked if Trey Lance struggles and if this offense kind of sputters a bit throughout the course of the season, which means you'll see this defense playing very long fields because of, whether it be turnovers or whether it be, the 49ers having to punt a lot. From a talent perspective, though, this is one of the most talented defenses in football for everything you mentioned. I mean, like losing DeForest Buckner and still being able to wreak havoc defensively is nothing to turn your nose up at.
Yeah, man.
It's just, I do think in this case, I think the 49ers are probably the one team in football where their offense actually will have an impact on what their defense is going to look like.
And and because you said that is so I think that kind of shows, at least for both of us, our lack of confidence right now in Trey Lance.
Yeah.
Because if you look at this team, again, let's not put one of the top tier quarterbacks. Let's put Matt Ryan on this team.
I think Matt Ryan on this team wins the division.
Not only that, I think Matt Ryan on this team could win. Think about this. We just talked about how the offense is going to dictate. You think the offense and Trey Lance is going to dictate both the offense and defense. Well, It's crazy because we didn't even say San Francisco on the offense either, because they have Brandon Ayuk, they have Deebo Samuels, they have George Kittle, who's a top wide receiver. I mean, top tight end. Mm-hmm. It's just this team. I think this team has the biggest quarterback question mark. And what I mean by that is this team is the only team that I think is only held back or will be propelled by the quarterback. Because, again, we both can agree that this team is a Super Bowl caliber team as far as the roster. They have a good coach. They have good everything. They have one of the best offensive lines. They have one of the best defenses. But this team ain't going nowhere if Trey Lance does not look that good.
Yeah.
And I think that's insane, man. But I agree with what you're saying. It's just interesting to me, a team that's so, how they said for the longest, the Bucks need, or the Broncos needs a quarterback. Well, they got that. Now we about to see what happens.
Yeah.
This to me is the ultimate if this team had a quarterback, and we'll see what Trey Lance is. I don't think Trey Lance is, about to wreck the league or anything. I could be wrong. He could be Patrick Mahomes, but I don't think so. And that's just crazy to me. Another question I have, and I don't mean to take over stuff, but
you're good. You're good.
What a team that I had the toughest time grading, like as far as the offense and defense, is the Baltimore Ravens. I think
Kyle Hamilton a really good preseason. He played 53 snaps in coverage, didn't allow a catch. I mean, I know it's
Yeah.
the preseason, but that is a sign of good things for
Yeah,
Kyle.
I think they have the possibility of having a good defense, a great defense. When you talk
Yeah.
about Calais Campbell, Humphreys, Peters coming back, and of course Hamilton, and they're always ranked amongst the top 10 in offensive production, but
Mhm.
that's usually because of the running game.
Yep.
Well, that ain't no usually. That is because of the
Yep.
running game and how good Lamar is.
Yep.
So, do you think that this team could be like, what is your do you think this what is your viewpoint of the Ravens right now as far as these rankings that we just did?
They're in my top 10 for both.
Hmm.
I think it was much easier for me to put them in my top 10 defensively than it was for me to put them in my top 10
Yeah.
offensively because they're just bereft of weapons offensively. Which I mean is really only because they traded away Hollywood Brown and
Hmm.
because J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are dealing with some injury stuff and we don't really know what their status is going to be heading into the season, right? But I still have the ultimate faith in Mark Andrews. I still love the connection between Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. It's one of the most underrated in football from a quarterback to pass catcher perspective, in my opinion. This defense is going to be top 10 with a potential to be, I think, be top 5 because this is going to have to be I think the Ravens have a shot at the playoffs. I don't have the Ravens winning the division like a lot of people do. I don't think that the Ravens road into the playoffs is going to be easy this season. I think they'll be a good team, but this is an AFC. Remember that a couple years ago had what was it? 7-10 win. This was before the playoffs went to 7 teams.
Hmm.
This is a team that a couple years ago when Brian Flores was the coach of Miami had 7-10 win football teams and Miami didn't make the playoffs and they had 10 wins.
Yeah.
The AFC is back to that now.
Yeah.
You're gonna need because if you look at it, right, if we just go down the Bills are gonna make the playoffs because they're in the AFC East, right? That's a lock, right? When you look at the AFC South, I think the Colts are gonna make the playoffs. That's a lock because it's the AFC South. You look at the West. Kansas City's last season was their worst season under Patrick Mahomes. They still won 12 games.
12 games, yeah.
You're gonna have to win 12 games.
You're gonna have to knock them. You're gonna have to
Win the
knock.
AFC
Yeah.
West.
Yeah. You're
So
yeah.
and I have the Chargers winning 12 games and winning the division because of a tiebreaker. That's it. That's the only reason why I have them winning the division. So like that's the thing. So we're talking about a scenario where I think Buffalo's going to win more than 12 games. The Chargers and the Chiefs, I have both at 12 games. I do think the Bengals can push 12 games. Really, if you're going to be in a wild card spot, you might have to win 10 or 11 games.
Yeah.
I think the Ravens can do that. It's just a question of how many other teams are going to do that too.
Mm-hmm.
Their defense is going to have to be the best it's been under Lamar Jackson if they're going to push and be back in the Super Bowl conversation like they've been since he's been there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like I think if this defense at its best, I think can cause problems for every offense in the AFC except for Buffalo.
Well, remember they almost beat Buffalo that one time when the offense
They
was
did
just
almost beat not Buffalo. Except for Los Angeles, and the only reason why is because Los Angeles has a passing game and a run game,
yes.
and a good one at that. Buffalo still, and we'll see because they did draft James Cook, and so maybe they're going to try to get that running game together.
Mm-hmm.
But the only team in the AFC, I'd say the Bengals, but like the Bengals and the Ravens are in the same division, and it's always a toss up with them, and especially now because both teams are good, it could go either way. But yeah, it was much easier for me to put the Ravens in my top 10 than it was for me to put their offense is in my top 10 too, because I have to respect Lamar Jackson and what he brings to the table. And I do think that they will be a top 10 offense.
Mm-hmm.
But like if I just like the rest of my top 10 defensively, and it's actually interesting. I kind of expected or was assuming that you would put Denver in your top 5 because everyone is that
top 5. What defense?
Yes, defensively.
I mean, they
Because
have
of what they had last season. My big thing was that's great, but they also have a new DC and they fired their head coach who was also heavy implemented on the defense. I think they'll be top 10 with the potential to be top 5. Right now, I can't comfortably say that the Broncos are still going to have a top 5 defense.
Yeah, the hardest two teams, especially. Okay, let me say that. So on both sides, offense, the hardest two teams that I didn't add or teams that I could have added that I didn't was, of course, the Rams when you have, I mean, they just won a Super Bowl, and you have Cooper Cup, and you get Allen Robinson. I think that's a huge acquisition. Um, and of course the Raiders, but we talked about them.
Yeah.
On the defensive side of the ball, it's Denver and Pittsburgh. I mean,
Pittsburgh's in my top 10.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about top five. The reason
Yeah,
why,
I know. Yeah, I'm just, yeah.
yeah, Pittsburgh. As far as, I mean, you still have Minka Parsons, you still have T.J. Watt, who won
Yeah.
Defensive Player of the Year. You know, I, that's pretty much
It's
what it.
hard given how sour of a taste their defense put in your mouth last season to kind of
Yeah.
bounce back. I do think though that, and I get it, he's a senior defensive assistant, but he's also the linebackers coach. And
Yes.
the biggest weakness last season for Pittsburgh was their linebacking core. So to now have Brian Flores be that guy to
Mhm.
get that line, like that's potentially could be good because now Minka Fitzpatrick doesn't have to be their fifth linebacker because they can't stop the run. He can go back to being that ball hawking safety that he was, that ultimately got him the money that he ended up getting once he arrived in Pittsburgh via trade. You have TJ Watt. My one concern with this defense is Devin Bush. Like,
Yeah.
what is he doing? I
What
think
are they doing?
what is he doing? I would like for this to be the year that we see Devin Bush kind of finally like arrive
Yeah.
and be
Yeah.
what we expect him to be coming out. Because if so, this could be look. It's hard to imagine a scenario where the Pittsburgh Steelers don't break even.
Hmm.
That's all they've done is at least break even under Mike Tomlin, right? I don't see them winning 9 games this year. That has a lot more to do with the quarterback than it does have to do with the talent. But
Yeah.
defensively, this is a defense that, at its best, if everything works, could cause some problems.
Hmm.
Look at, if Minka Fitzpatrick can go back to being what he's supposed to be, which is a ball hawking safety and a really good safety in the passing game. If TJ Watt can still be TJ Watt, and if Devin Bush would just show up and be who we thought he was going to be coming out, that's a defense that could cause some problems and can turn some heads, and it could potentially turn the Steelers' fortunes, especially if reports are true that Mitchell Trubisky is leading the race as far as the starting quarterback is concerned. And as long as he, you know, still does okay and doesn't ruin it, I think this is a team that could maybe, I don't think they'll make it, but they could potentially be up on those graphics come week 14, 15, when we see on CBS, who the teams that are in the hunt. I think we could see the Steelers logo up there potentially if the defense is up to par. But I agree with you. It was talent wise, they have a lot of talent, but last season put a really bad taste in my mouth personally for what that defense was doing, because that was not a
Yeah.
Pittsburgh defense last year.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why I didn't put Cleveland in my top five. Because yes, they were dealing with injuries last year, but top five, with the names that they have and had last year, they were middle of the pack. Like it felt like it was just Myles Garrett and maybe a Newsome pop up here and there. I mean, we know the pick six he had against Joe Burrow that went around the news circuit the other day because of the pivot, but it's just, I left a sorry taste. Like, this team this is one of the Cleveland Browns are one of those teams that we said is a stacked team, especially defensively, and to be a middle of the pack to damn near bad, especially run defense. That's why that's one of the biggest hesitations I had putting that's one of the biggest reasons why I didn't put Cleveland in my top five. But I definitely see, where you're coming from. They have big names. Denzel Ward is one of the best defensive players in the league. So is, of course, Myles Garrett. I could see him winning Defensive Player of the Year, but they have to me, a team that has this many weapons and that has these big names has to be top five. No, has to at least finish top 10 or 5 in defensive rating. And the fact that they didn't, I was like, all right, like, come on now. So
this wasn't, before we go, this wasn't on the chart, but if you could rank, and you don't have to put them in order if you don't want to, if you could rank who you think will be the 5 best teams overall in the league this season, who would those 5 teams be?
All right. Let's see. So I'll start with number 5. Now this is all coming off the dome. Thanks, Marcus. So I'm joking. Number 5, Seattle. No, I'm joking. Number 5, I'll say Green Bay.
Okay.
I think that it is going to. I do think it's going to take some time for the wide receiver core and Aaron Rodgers to get on the same page.
Yep.
But me and you both agree that this is a top 5 defense. So you once they start clicking, because you know they're going to start clicking at some point, because not only is Aaron Rodgers arguably the best quarterback in the league, but I think he understands that his time is coming to an end very soon. Not saying his talent is falling off, but
Yep.
it doesn't talent. He doesn't. He seems like he's here for a good time, not a long time at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I think you see the urgency in Green Bay and the urgency in Aaron Rodgers to get these wide receivers together. So I have Green Bay at number 5. Number 4, I have. You see, I'm not as high on Tampa Bay as other people, even though I know I have them both in my top 5 list. Those injuries to the offensive line is huge, man,
Yeah.
and losing Gronk is huge. I just
It
don't.
is. It is.
I don't. Nah. Um, I'm gonna put Chargers at number 4, and this is honestly, if everything works out the way it's supposed to work out, as far as offense and defense, it's hard to not put them in my top 5 when you can have an argument that they can be number 1 in both on both sides of the ball if
Sure.
everything works out the way it works out. Number 3, I mean, I haven't seen anybody dethrone Kansas City Chiefs yet. I know they lost last year, but I can't get a 17-point lead going into halftime out of my head. You know what I'm saying? And if it wasn't for them doing the dumbest goal line play, it might have broke Cincinnati. I don't know.
Could have.
So I have Kansas City at number 3. I just need to see someone beat them. Um, I know who my number 1 is. That's very easy. Number 2, I'm gonna say it, and it's and this is I'm gonna do an asterisk because I have to take out the first time ever. I'm taking out the quarterback. I'm taking out the quarterback. The San Francisco 49ers to me have the second best roster in the entire football league.
Yeah.
It's not,
That's fair.
if not the best roster in the entire football league. It's just we don't know what we're gonna get from Trey Lance, and I don't think even at his best this year, I don't think they're gonna be a Super Bowl contender. But putting him aside, this roster is the best roster arguably in all of football, and I can't. It's so stacked. I can't. You miss a name. It's like, well, what about him? I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about
Yeah.
that.
Hey, that
So
guy.
I have San Fran, of course, number 1. I mean, like you said, I think we both agree. It's Buffalo, and it's by
Yeah.
a long shot,
By a lot, by a mile.
by
A
a
country
mile.
mile.
Buffalo has 2 of everything
Yeah.
outside of quarterback, and it's just when you're as stacked as them, and literally came a coin flip away and a
Mhm.
stop away from the Super Bowl. And I think if they would have made it to, I think if they would have made it to the AFC Championship, they would have beat the absolute dog ish out of Cincinnati. And I also think that they would have beat the Rams in the Super Bowl. So, now, of course, those are all hypotheticals and what ifs. But it's the Buffalo, and by a long shot, in my opinion.
Oddly enough, I can rank offenses and defenses from 5 to 1. I can't do teams overall from 5 to 1. I do have the Bills at number 1. That's easy.
Mm.
Despite them not having been in either of my top 5s, offensively or defensively, I do think the Rams are going to be the second best team in football this season. Um, I one of these two teams, whether it's the Rams or the Bengals, are going to have a Super Bowl hangover. I think it's more likely that the Bengals will be hungover than the Rams.
Yeah.
And I think the Rams will be okay. They play in a division that without Russell Wilson is a lot weaker than I think a lot of people will like to admit, right?
Mhm.
And to your point about the 49ers, it's a fair one, but And it makes perfect sense because the talent is there. But until I see Trey Lance in regular season football, I'm
Makes
not
sense.
going to anoint the 49ers in any shape or way. And we all know I have no faith in the Arizona Cardinals whatsoever. And you shouldn't at this point. It's
You
you
should.
see this movie over and over again. You should not have any faith in the Arizona Cardinals unless you are an Arizona Cardinals fan. And even then, you shouldn't have faith in the Arizona
Yeah.
Cardinals. So have the Bills won the Rams too. 3 for me is the Chargers. I do think the Chargers, as we've said, perfect storm if everything goes as it's supposed to on both sides as far as health is concerned, could be the 3rd best team in football. Um, have the Packers at 4, and the 5th best team in football. I honestly believe is going to be the New Orleans
Commanders. Oh,
Saints.
damn.
I
Okay.
I think that
I can see that.
I think that Chris Olave I think is in the best position as a rookie because he might not have the best quarterback, but he is the perfect complement for his quarterback because Jameis Winston loves to push the ball down the field. Chris Olave, when he was in high school in Ohio State, was the deep ball guy.
Yeah.
They don't have that in New Orleans. Michael Thomas isn't that guy. Jarvis Landry isn't that guy. Both of those are going to be 1 and 2. He gets to be the 3 and push the ball down the field. The defense, I think, is going to be exceptional. And we haven't heard anything about it, as I've said a couple times, because of everything that's going on with Deshaun Watson and stuff. But I would assume, I mean, we're coming up on like midnight hour at this point, but I am still under the mindset that Alvin Kamara is going to miss some type of time
I don't
because
think
of what
so.
happened in Vegas.
I
But I feel like at this point he's probably not.
yeah.
Either way, though, the running game won't suffer because you have Mark Ingram, and if Alvin Kamara is available week 1 and you have Mark Ingram, that's even better because we've seen what that movie looks like a couple years ago as far as how prolific that backfield tandem can be,
Mhm.
especially because Alvin Kamara is much more prolific in the passing game than Mark Ingram, so they can do a lot more things as far as the two running back set. So I do think the Saints. I'm super high on the Saints this year. I do think the Saints could be the 5th best team in football. That of course means that Michael Thomas is going to be healthy and Jameis Winston is going to be healthy, and he's going to play more like he was playing last season and not like how he was playing in Tampa Bay, throwing 30 picks. That can't happen. But it looks like he was past that last season. He was
Yeah.
playing really good football
He's
before
playing good.
before he got hurt.
Man, I'm sorry to the Goat Talk audience. I'm gonna say something. I know he's not gonna play most of the season, but if he would have, we have to look at yo. Damn it, I'm gonna say it. I'm sorry, Marcus. The Cleveland Browns, bro. That is a team. When
It
you
is.
have
It is.
to me they have the best 1-2 punch when we talk about the running back position.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Even though
yeah,
Kareem won't be there anymore.
yeah, yeah.
Like where
Yeah,
else are you gonna go?
exactly. Yeah, and he said it like yesterday. Like, what are we gonna do? The season
Yeah.
starts like 2 weeks. I just think, bro, this is going to be the first year. We always say, "Oh, it's wide open." No, this is the first year where it is wide open, honestly, about who is going to win it all. Because there's a lot of teams that hell, I can see Denver making a run. I can see Baltimore making a run. Hell, Baltimore had absolutely me, you, and the dude that was working at 7-Eleven down the street were playing we're playing for the Ravens last year, and Lamar Jackson had us at they were the number 1 team in the AFC before he went out.
Yep.
And then of course you got the Chargers, and I don't know what the hell is going to go on with the NFC. I mean, right now to me it's a 3-team race, and everybody else is just like, hey. So it's to me that this is wide open. I'm not as high on the Bengals as a lot of people because I see how they were down in damn near every game that they had. Now they did come back and win,
Yeah.
but you know there was a couple times when it could have went south and it didn't. So yeah, man, it's going to be interesting. It's going to this year is going to, I think it's wide open, and people lie to try to get hype. It was wide open. It's not, bro. It's the Rams, but no, like it is wide open this year. Like honestly,
I think this is gonna be a really good season football wise because of how just like wide open. Because you're right, there's like about there's about 10 different teams that can make the playoffs in the AFC.
yeah,
Of those 10 teams, there's about 5 of them that you could see actually going all the way and representing the conference in the Super Bowl. And once you get past the 3 teams at the top of the NFC, any of those teams outside of Tampa Bay, Los Angeles, and Green Bay can make the playoffs. And if they all do what they're supposed to do, we're talking, Philly and I know it's crazy, but like that, like any of those teams, if they get their act together this season, could potentially make it. Like it truly is wide open on both sides for two completely different reasons. And I think this season is going to be very, very interesting. As always, my guy, please let everybody know where they can find you and all of your content.
I appreciate you having me on, man. YouTube, all DSPs, the Unpopular Podcast. I'm the logo with the orange, or depending on how hard you squint your eyes, red headphones. I drop episode every Wednesday and Saturday. Again, all DS on the DSPs, they drop at 12 or midnight Wednesday, Saturday on YouTube. It premieres at 9 a.m. Wednesdays and Saturdays. And yeah, that's really the only place I care if you find me at. I mean, I have an Instagram, uh, but I want people to gravitate towards the actual content. So yeah, all YouTube DSPs every Wednesday and Saturday. So I appreciate it, man.
It's always a pleasure to have Jalen on the show. Jalen makes really great content, and it's always a pleasure to sit down and listen to and or watch his shows.
Yeah. Yeah, don't let him fool you guys. He said the Green Bay Packers were going to win before you press record. I didn't want to say nothing, but we had a whole conversation. He said Green Bay is winning it all. I said, all right, bro.
We did talk about how crazy these Washington Commanders fans are, thinking that the Commanders are going to they're going to win 12 games this year.
They good. They good. Now, look, you cannot lie and say that the NFC East is not wide open. Well, let me not say wide open. It's a three-team race at this point. And even the Giants. The Giants have like the best roster. They just have Daniel Jones throwing the ball. Like they have a good roster but it's the
Sure.
Carson and
Is Carson Wentz still a 12-win quarterback? I don't think so.
If you're not a 12-win quarterback on the Indianapolis Colts, you're not a 12-win quarterback for the Commanders. To be real with you.
It's always a pleasure to have Jalen on the show and talk football or basketball when the time comes. You guys can follow me. You know where to find me on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and now on Facebook. For all you OGs out there that don't know what a Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok is, you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at GTP Marcus. You can find me on Facebook at GTP Marcus, or you can also just search up my name and look for the logo, and it'll pop up there. There's like a lot of Dwayne's in the world, apparently, but there's only 2 Dwayne Marcuses in the world that I know of, me and my father. So it's very easy to decipher from that standpoint. Yeah, content will be coming. Episode 200 will be live. It'll be our final preview for the NFL season. The date is to be determined. When you get promoted at work, your schedule gets kind of crazy, and you gotta try to figure these things out.
two first names getting promoted.
Creative now.
I meant to ask you, bro. I saw you went to was it Raw? How was that, bro? How was a wrestling live event?
It was amazing. It was absolutely wonderful. The seats were fantastic. They could have been better. I was sitting next to the Titantron. It's like I couldn't see like the Titan, but it was great. It was splendid. I enjoyed everything. Got hot a little bit because some of the wrestlers have fire for their pyro. It gets a little bit spicy in there, but no, it was really good. They'll be back in December, and I'll be back again.
Got you, my man.
With a story so long that it looks like the little perforated lines on the paper. Yeah, but it's worth it. It was great. Triple H is fantastic. WrestleMania 40 is going to be in Philly next year. I'll be there. Oh. And yeah, I was going to go to WrestleMania 39, but it's in LA, and I don't know if I'll be able to get out there. But I can take a bus to Philly to go to WrestleMania 40. So that's going to be a blast. It's going to be a blast. So yeah, for my man Jalen of the Unpopular Podcast, this is Marcus of Go Talk with Marcus signing off. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, you guys enjoy the rest of your lives and subscribe to the channel. Please.
That's important.